What up, folks? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Vigilante Coffee. Vigilante Coffee is our new daily fuel provider at the Generationless podcast. And you know I'm pumped because I've been going to Vigilante Coffee from the beginning. As a matter of fact, they're the reason why I started drinking coffee. And the great thing about it is that they're roasted right here in our hometown of Hyattsville, Maryland. That smooth Vigilante coffee.
I'm super excited. Generation Us back on the mic. We got guests today. We back on off a hiatus. I'm O, obviously the futuristic baby boomer.
Lively hair progressive millennial.
And we got two guests in the house that we want them to introduce themselves and also what is their, generational cohort.
Who wants to go first? Shiana? Oh, Lily?
All right, Lily.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Lily, formerly known as the podcast host of a dead podcast, Make Peace Not Beef. I still carry
That was a dope podcast. That was such a dope
Thank
podcast.
you. Currently unemployed student.
This is just going downhill.
It's going downhill. Just like my paycheck and my bank account.
I promise she's more dope than this. It gets better.
Hopefully. It depends. But yeah, super excited to finally be in the mythical town of Hyattsville. Because I've been following this podcast for almost 3 years now. And I was listening in the comfort of my own home in Toronto.
Toronto, Canada. I love Toronto.
Very nice.
I do too, but I'm biased. So
All right.
very excited to be in DC. Woohoo!
So what
And what's your
generation do you
generation?
fall in?
Well, I am a millennial.
Millennial.
Give it up for millennials.
Yeah, all right. And who else do we have over here? The lovely.
I'm Shiana. I'm a millennial, and I'm here because I'm also a fan of the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Get the mic closer to you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been listening to sporadic episodes, and I've really loved the character development of the two hosts on the pod.
Oh, you kind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you guys for having me today.
And Shiana, what generation you fall in?
I'm a millennial.
I thought you were Gen Z. Okay. So you're millennial. So I got three millennials against me today. All right, so I got it. All right, I know what I'm up against. Okay, all right.
Everybody still close to the mic?
Yeah. So I'm super excited. I'm personally a huge fan of Lily. Met Lily during the pandemic on Clubhouse. She was super dope. I just fell in love with her and have been following her since. Super huge fan of Shiana. She's just super dope. We're going to hear about her as well, too. Mm-hmm. Obviously, my co-host, I've always been a big fan of his. But today we're going to...
no choice.
Well, I got no choice. Even some days when I'm not a fan,
Good and
I
the bad.
Got to be a fan. That's how family goes. But today we're going to talk about climate change. And, literally, we got two experts in the area. So I'm kind of super excited.
Well, we wanna keep this very light and chill. I mean, these guys are in the field, but it's more so of a
Everyone's an expert.
everyone. The idea is everyone is an expert and everyone can contribute, and I think that's the twist here. Is because I people sometimes feel like myself, like I couldn't really be a contributor towards climate change because I wasn't an expert, and so even though these guys have more knowledge, they're in the field. It's more like all of us. What is our climate change journey?
So you're saying all of us on this conversation here are experts in our own right, or everybody out the public at large are experts in climate change? Because I would take issue with that.
Everybody is a contributor,
Right?
or can be a contributor.
Everybody, people at large.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And so that's probably one of the things that concerns me is because I don't share that view. I don't think that the population at large is as conscious and concerned about the issues of climate change as they should be. And in fact, I'm dismayed constantly by the ignorance of people that are either oblivious to it or mildly interested and don't care. And I think that they don't understand the seriousness of the climate change issue and what their lack of attention and care is doing to the collective that's going to cause this earth to be ultimately uninhabitable.
That's true. That's very true. But that I think having this podcast and this platform for me, especially, I am no expert and I care about it. You know, I've been passionate about this for a long time and I've been learning and I've been sharing my experiences as I go here on the pod. You as well. And I think we are a representative of the people who are normal in society that are like, yeah, you don't have to be a part of the sector. You don't have to have a climate career to care and do something what little you can. I mean, so today we have two guests that have more knowledge in it and they can share light on it. We can have a conversation about it. But I just want, I think, to position the listeners to understand that they too can be a part. Because when I listen to podcasts and I hear expert, and I'm like, oh, they're expert. They're doing the job. I'm just here to listen. Mm-hmm. And I think the message should be we all can partake in this.
We all have a responsibility.
Correct.
Right? And that's key. And so one of the things I'm curious about, and I mentioned this to Lily when I was super excited to see her, and I hugged up on her. And I'm like, because I met her when she was, we were in Clubhouse during the pandemic. And she mentioned that she was going to be going to Harvard. Mm-hmm. And, in and of itself, going to Harvard is a huge, accomplishment. But she was going to be focusing on things related to climate change. Her podcast, dealt with things that were related to climate change. That's how we connected. So I'm curious, since you've gotten to Harvard, what's that been like? Leaving Toronto, Canada, coming to Boston, Massachusetts, being at Harvard. What's the transition been like, and what's the Harvard experience been like?
Yeah, great question. Well, first of all, I just want to clarify, I definitely don't identify as an expert on climate change.
You're right.
More of just a concerned and engaged citizen doing all that she can.
You are an activist for the most part, yeah.
Activist is
right.
Yeah, okay.
And so to talk about the transition from Toronto, that's when I had a full-time job. I was working as a software engineer at Vice Media, and that was before I decided to apply for grad school to come to Boston. I think I definitely had above average knowledge when it comes to climate change, as someone who really cared about it, but I didn't have the practical knowledge and the tools and the skill sets to be able to do something about it in terms of policymaking, which is why I wanted to get a formal education to understand how exactly can policymakers contribute to climate action and how can we codify this into our law and regulations and how do we enforce it. So, the journey from Toronto to Boston, it was a challenging one because I don't know when people go back to grad school, but I went back to grad school at the age of 29, which is a little bit on the later side because of the pandemic. I'm supposed to be 27. Mm-hmm. So, when you're hitting 30, your memory and everything is on a decline. You start to feel it. It's like...
Don't say that, because if that's true...
sorry.
The boomer that has no memory.
What were your names again? Who are you?
Hey. But exactly, but the case for you is different because you don't age.
Ooh, she's good.
Yeah.
Oh, she's good.
Black and crack.
Asian or raisin.
Asian or raisin is starting to. That's what Korean beauty products are for. It's a facade. But the transition was rough because, first of all, I went from having income to no income to having my own apartment to sharing it with 3 other girls again, like student life. And so you kind of strip away who you thought you were and to delve into this new role as I am a student. I am here to learn, to study, to learn from people who are smarter than me, to learn from professors, to learn from everyone around me who comes from different walks of life. And it's like a very enriching and humbling experience. Because when you're at work, you get into your own bubble, like exactly like I said, people think of you as the expert, but now, no, I am not the expert here. I am the student. I am sitting in the classroom. Mm-hmm. I am surrounded by experts.
Yeah.
So very, very humbling. And taking courses like statistics made me realize how much I No.
Now statistics.
No, it's actually yes, actually, it was one of my favorite courses. I had to do problem sets. Problem sets. Come on, it's been 10 years since I've done problem sets.
Yeah.
Right, I know. Yeah. It's like you forget how much work it is to be a student until you're a student again. You're like, shit, I'm too old to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after a while, you get into the groove of things. Problem sets, exams. You get into the student mindset. And what's different, this is what I tell people. Doing graduate degree is a choice. Undergrad, you kind of have to do it because everybody thinks you need at least an undergraduate degree to get a job. But coming back to school again was a deliberate choice I made. And so I feel like everybody in graduate school is eager to learn, is eager to take on initiative, like without anyone pushing them, because they made the choice of coming back to school to learn.
So let me say one thing, just a point on that, because when I was in law school, a couple of points. One, to your point, everybody feels, many people feel as though they need at least a undergraduate degree to be able to be competitive in society. But again, postgraduate is a choice, right? And everybody spends a lot of money or takes out a lot of debt to be in that environment. And so what you find is that the competitive energy that's in that whole experience is huge, because everybody is they paid to be here and they wanted to be here and they're motivated to be here, so they want to be here and crush you. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And so to one point that you mentioned, when I was in law school my first year, I had 3 students in the first year law. 2 were 77 years old, and 1 was almost 80 years old.
Wow.
So when you talk about people going back and being older, right? I mean, I had literally 2 77s and 180, and they crushed law school. I mean, they absolutely destroyed it.
And they were only paying like $14 a semester.
Well, that is not true.
Senior citizen discount.
No.
They
had no discount. They paid full price. But here's the thing.
Okay.
Here's the thing that's significant about that. They had life experiences. So when we were in classes and talking about mortgages and how mortgages work and things, they had bought houses, sold houses. They knew how that worked. We, coming right out of undergrad, never bought a house, never had a house, so it was much harder for us. So, but again, to your point, and I always say this, it's never too late. Never too late to go back.
When you're an adult in the real world, you have work and everything, and you go back, you take it seriously, Lily. Like, you have more appreciation for it. So I bet that was a different experience. You probably learn a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Well, the tuition makes sure that you do.
Yeah, that's right. Because you got skin in the game, and you want to get something out of that, right?
Literally.
Okay. So now, Shiana, you have a passion for climate, I assume. Yes? I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so. So I'm an energy economist. I work in the government, the U.S. government, so I do have to make a disclaimer that all of the views that I share are my personal views and not that of the government or the Biden-Harris administration.
Okay, absolutely.
I have to say that every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course you do. Yeah, absolutely.
So my
and quite frankly, just we want your personal views, and we don't want the standard issue things. We want your views. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I've worked on energy issues for maybe 7 years now, pretty deeply, and I've worked on largely the decarbonization side. So this is really talking about like heavy industry, like national plans to decarbonize. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I've worked on this issue at a pretty high level, mostly because I honestly, especially when I was, let's say 5 years ago, a little bit younger, I didn't really have faith in the individual consumer to be able to make a change in our environment and climate change.
So you were like me, because I don't have faith that the individual consumer is making the change that's going to make a difference.
Right. And I didn't. And I thought, my opinions on recycling are nuanced, but, things like recycling, a lot of big oil and gas companies and big like consumer products companies were pushing that as a way to kind of put the onus on the consumer, on the individual to act, as opposed to like really taking on the burden of making their products more sustainable in the first place, as opposed to like adding all this packaging and all those things, right? So I just was a little jaded by the individual impact. However, one of the issues that I've worked on is related to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the energy prices related to such. They spiked up in 2022. It was, it impacted the whole world. And we saw in Europe that consumers, like individuals, actually reduced their demand for energy by a significant amount. And that was something, we haven't really seen that. So we see that during wartime. And so that's like really my background is in energy security. And so we see that during wartime where people actually individually will be like, let me turn down the thermostat.
But what prompted that behavior? Why did they do that?
The high energy prices.
Okay.
And also because they were, Europe was really reliant on Russian natural gas, and Russia obviously was not going to provide them natural gas in the same volume, so they had to reduce their demand.
So it wasn't choice; it was necessity that caused them to do that.
But they didn't have to. It was a target. Like the governments were like, we need to we want everyone to get on board and bring down their consumption. And so individuals were like, okay, this is wartime. Not for us, but for Ukraine. And so we're going to collectively do that. And they did it. They hit their target. And that was a consumer, there were a lot of campaigns that pushed consumers to reduce their consumption. But I think about that because in the U.S., I don't think we would do that unless we were at war.
Right. It's a different energy, different, when you're at war, it takes people gather and do things together, knowing that they depend on each other more than when things are going normally, because people have an individual mindset, right? When things are normal.
And it's a very American thing that I've noticed.
It is an American thing.
Yeah.
It was something I noticed when I came to the United States too. So it was like, whoa, it's really all about the I here. I mean, we push the American dream. You can be all you can be, and I have a dream. Like all of that idea is really for the individual to achieve success. Or back home, where it's like it take a village to raise a child. If I'm walking in a neighborhood, kids, adults who just know me can tell my parents that I did something and I'll be punished for it. Everybody keep an eye out for everyone, but here it's not. Everybody's minding their own business.
It used to be that way. Yeah. No, I mean, when my dad grew up, my dad would, in his generation, if you did something bad at school and you were sent home suspended, you get a beating almost on every block on the way home. Yeah, because
really, it was like that here.
It was like absolutely. Well, again, my dad is from North Carolina, Southern community, and it was a village raises a child.
This might be a community thing.
Well, I think it's a generational thing.
But how many communities that you have in America, right? Because you have neighborhoods, but how many communities do you have, right?
I think that's generational too, because I think what has happened.
It wasn't generational back home.
Well, I think what has happened over time is that now we've gotten to a place, and look, again, we've talked about this on the podcast where I used to play outside and had to be home by the time streetlights came on, right? And generations after me, they didn't go outside; they played video games, and there was a fear that parents had about having their children be outside.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And now that's exacerbated. You have play dates where you go out structured, but you don't just go outside and play with random kids. You don't do that. But that's how I grew up. Yeah. And so as a result of that fear permeates into the kids, and that whole mindset of stay in, play video games, whatever you're going to do, but you don't go outside. And that's why this whole obesity level, kids, all this kind of stuff is a result of this whole silo mentality that we now have, where we live in these,
So, I'm curious, what do you guys make of the data that you take this data point that is very specific to a war-torn zone, and you witness that people's actions are really different, and they care more about everything, not just climate change, but it also contribute to climate change as well. But how do you replicate that data to go, how can we implement that in the United States where people are not at war, and get the individual to care about climate change?
That is so hard. I mean, honestly, I think one of the biggest ways they were able to do that in Europe, again, it's wartime, so their campaigns were specific, but I think maybe more, I don't want to say more campaigns, but I think there has to be a mindset shift in this country that, we're not in wartime, but our impact, our regular day-to-day actually does have an impact. Our consumer choices have an impact. When we are okay with having overly packaged goods, if we're not pushing back, if we're not paying a little bit more for a premium good that is maybe more sustainable, like that's a signal, right? So I mean, for me, it's I don't have an answer to that. How do you how do you make Americans care? But Lily, I feel like you might have a better answer than I do.
No, I wanted to add to what Shiana said about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and based on what I understood in school. So if I understand correctly, I feel like Europeans have always had a different mentality when it comes to energy consumption, because typically countries like Germany and especially in Scandinavian countries, energy prices are much higher than in the United States.
Yep.
Exactly. And if you look at gas prices, European gas prices are almost 3 times as high.
Three times as high?
Very, very high.
They don't produce a ton of their own gas.
Exactly.
We produce all of our natural gas in the U.S. and
Wow.
we export half of it to Europe now.
And I'm salty that my prices are what they are right now.
Wow.
Very, very high.
They're pretty low. I mean, it's like $1.50 for Henry. Okay, we don't have to get into prices.
Exactly. And precisely because I have a lot of European classmates, now that I go to a very international school here, I get to, a lot of my classmates are German, French, Spanish, whatever. A lot of them from European countries. When I say European, I mean the European Union mostly. And so, for example, if you look at Germany, the country has always had very, very progressive energy policies. And this is even starting before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But especially after what happened is, for example, Germany, the government has now given out unlimited passes for trains. But then again, transportation is very, very developed within the European Union. And that's something we don't have in the United States. Then again, they have the geographical advantage. Europe is very small and concentrated. It's easy to build trains. But a lot of these trains, like, for example, France's TGV, these were developed 40 years ago. And so I feel like a lot of Europeans, for example, who are millennials, my age, they grew up in a culture where they take public transit. They have trains, they have subways. And so Europe is not, for the most part, is not a car-centered.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say Germany uses a lot of coal, so I'm going to call them out. On Stop using coal.
Well, and so here's something that really affected me. Because during the pandemic, when everything was locked down, right? People were not going to work, right? Everything was shut down, right? We weren't using there was no rush hour. Everybody wasn't going into the office, right? Cars weren't on the road, and the pollution dropped precipitously, right? And it almost kind of gave us a step back from the erosion that's been happening. Because of climate change, we got a breather, right? Mother Nature got an opportunity to, oh my God, thank God, right?
Dolphins came back to Venice.
The quality of air. There was no smog over LA. There was all these things that happened, right? That suggested that this is where we need to be going this direction, right? But now there's a whole movement to get everybody back in the office, go back to work, back to driving to downtown, being in a rush hour, and all those things. And those are the things that infuriate me.
I was thinking that was irreversible at this point. Are we still going to, you think we're going to, or is more going to be a hybrid situation?
There is a significant movement of corporate America to get people back in the office.
They pay for that space, so you need to use it.
There you go.
Can we repurpose the space in a different way?
No, but think about it. If I am a large law firm or a Fortune 500 company and I have a commercial lease downtown and I'm paying an exorbitant, let's say I'm paying $75 per square foot and I've got a whole 2-3 floors in a building and everybody's working remotely, even though the data suggests that we're more productive and we're getting more done, I'm carrying this 10-year lease that I'm paying on this $75 per square foot office space that nobody's in. So I don't want to do that. If I'm doing that, bring your ass to work, right? Not to mention, and this I do have some, concern about, the cleaners and the restaurants and all the establishments that were there that were at the time when everybody's coming into work. You got to eat lunch somewhere. You got to take your cleaner somewhere. You got to park. You got to do this. Now, people not coming back in. They're struggling. So what's the balance? What do you do?
I don't know. What is the balance? Really?
Public policy, student, what have you found? What have they taught you? What do you know?
Well, if you ask me, I think we should design our cities differently, first of all.
Can you do that when they're already set out a certain way?
Good question. It's very hard, but we've seen how certain parts of the cities have been revitalized, right? For example, in New York and Toronto, they have like regional projects to revitalize a certain part of the city that used to be an industrial area, and then they change it into parks and public spaces. I think the reason why we're experiencing so much congestion is because, well, every highway has a maximum capacity, right? But as urbanization happens and more people moving into the city, the highway is going to exceed the capacity for which it was designed for 50 years ago, whenever the highway was built.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there's a couple of ways. I'm not an urban planning student, but first of all,
I was going to say that's urban planning. Certainly.
Exactly. Imagine like if you have one downtown and you have financial center, everything that's concentrated in that one area, then everybody's gonna drive to that one area. Then that region becomes very congested. But if you have mixed use buildings, for example, spread out, and you don't just have one concentrated financial center in a city, then people don't have to all drive to the same spot and drive back to work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So think about how we use space differently, and maybe we can disperse.
Mm.
But those things have to happen. I mean, the bureaucracy that goes into having to have the concept and then get it through and then, pass the legislation and get it. I mean, we don't have that kind of time. No. I mean, look.
Why don't we?
Yeah, well, because
if we have to do
because if
we have laundry to do.
If in the next 25 to 30 years, on the path that we're currently on, the planet becomes inhabitable, if that's true, right? Then, the kids y'all don't have yet that you ultimately will have, how are they going to live on this planet if it's not habitable?
So,
that's
quick
25 years? That's like right around the corner.
On that. So actually, surprisingly, what's going to happen is not all countries will become uninhabitable. Some countries will actually become more habitable. Countries in Scandinavia, such as Sweden, Norway, even Canada, they benefit from climate change because these are typically cooler regions. However, when you look at the global south, the vast majority of it will become more uninhabitable because
that's the issue.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah. So you're saying that in Canada, and Toronto is one of my favorite places.
Me too.
I guess it should be. But you're saying that if Canada is it will benefit from climate change because more people will migrate there because that's going to be the only place that few places that you can actually live and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
But places that are further down south, where the water level raises and the ocean sea levels raise that become underwater, the Florida Keys and all that. I mean, what's the expense to the people that don't have the resources to be able to migrate?
Exactly. That's exactly the problem.
Yeah, I was just thinking, this is actually the reason why I even dove into climate change after, my career and all these other things. But it highlights, how marginalized people around the world really get the short end of the stick every single
always
time. And I think one of the reasons why not everyone cares about climate change, especially in this country, is they think it's a white people's issue. Let's be frank. They think it's a privileged person's issue. They don't care about poverty. They don't think it's and I was one of those people, honestly. I was like, okay, how can I think about climate change and the environment when I'm trying to help people who are impoverished? I'm thinking about food security for the people in the worst parts of Skid Row. I'm thinking about I'm just thinking about other human issues, the things that directly impact low income folks on a regular basis. Climate change and the environment does not do that, or so I thought. But when you look at who really hurts from climate change, it's marginalized, it's poor people.
Absolutely, marginalized communities, right? With the communities of color,
including those here in the U.S.
Absolutely,
not just the global South, but definitely the global.
You look
South.
at New Orleans and in the 7th Ward. I mean, you look at how Hurricane Katrina, that they still haven't recovered from that, and that's been how many years ago?
And, and Louisiana gets so much money from natural gas exports, like LNG exports. I can talk about this all day, but they get so much money from these exports that we go into Europe, and yet it's still one of the poorest states in the country, and they still have some of the poorest people.
Of course.
like deeply poor people.
Yeah, because that money doesn't trickle down
does
into the
not.
marginalized communities.
Clearly not.
Right.
So, I mean, that's, I think, to me, and you're talking about Hurricane Katrina, like, all these things are connected. But if you just look at Louisiana, for example, that's just an example of how all of these things intersect. And at the end of the day, it's poor people, it's people of color, it's just like the, lowest rungs of society, sadly, that get the shortest end of the stick.
But here's the thing. See, that calculus, that dynamic doesn't get better, it gets worse.
Well, I was going to suggest that this is exactly why renewable energy can actually level the playing fields and potentially bring about equity.
How? Tell me.
Energy. So typically in the past, right, energy has been, you have these massive energy providers who provide like natural gas, oil, and all these services. But in a world where we have renewable energy, the production could potentially be decentralized. And with the introduction of a carbon market, then you have this cap and trade system. This effectively allows polluters to buy permits from less polluting communities. And so this is a way to generate profit for those who have typically polluted less, but also it's a way to equalize both the profit generation and also the production of energy.
So help me understand this, because you raised an interesting thing. I remember corporations that talked about buying, corporate, carbon credits, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can keep polluting, but if I buy these carbon credits, then I can keep polluting and feel good about it. I mean, that's what it seemed like to me.
Cap on total emissions, carbon dioxide specifically. There's a cap on how much, on the volume of emissions that a community, a country, like let's say a state, can produce. So you're just trading amongst that region.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is it effective? Because I'm thinking you would have to have something of a global carbon currency value almost, to say this is how much that we have left, and so this is how much each company are able to trade for. It also defeats the purpose.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't work when it's just one state, like California, for example. It doesn't work if it's only one country, although that's the start of it, because they have to figure out their regulations, what works with their method of governance, right? So sadly, that's the start of it. However, I think the solution overall still is to put a price on carbon, because you're putting a price on this externality, this this thing that we never put a cost to. But when we are polluting, it's a cost to the environment.
Right.
There's a social cost to it, but
right.
We're not putting a dollar value on it. Companies are getting away with just polluting and producing stuff, but they're able to just dump things in the river and not get charged for it, but they should get charged for it. So this cap and trade, there's a lot of different terms for it, emissions trading, all these different things. But by putting a price on carbon or emissions, that is a very key way to solving the problem, because you're it's essentially holding companies and people accountable. And so we have it by region, we have it by country. Right now we have voluntary schemes in place. It's not really helpful. However, countries are working together. I can say this from government level. They're working together to try to find ways that their emissions trading schemes, that's what they're called, ETSs, are actually talking to one another, that they can be calibrated so they're like currency in a way. So that's the goal. Hopefully one day we'll have a global price for carbon, but it takes a lot of work. It's essentially creating currency out of nowhere, a market out of nowhere.
So here's a real issue for me, because the current administration is concerned about climate change. It seems to be a priority. You have an upcoming election that's on the horizon. And, depending on the candidate, if it's Republican, they don't care as much about climate change. That's not a priority for them. So that administration, if it gets elected, could cause, to me, to be a setback in where we are and where we're headed.
Well, a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, what I noticed is that there's this emerging cohort of young Republicans who don't necessarily agree with older Republicans and their views when it comes to climate change. So there's a prominent activist. His name is Benji Backer. I think he was actually the founder of the Republican movement on climate change. He's a young climate activist. He himself is Republican, and he says, "I've never voted for a Republican for president because I don't vote for climate deniers." And so even though he himself is a Republican, he's only voted for Democrat presidents because he doesn't vote for climate deniers. And so you now see young Republicans who might still hold on to, like whatever you call it, right-wing values, but then who are pushing for climate action in their own ways.
Yeah.
And see, so that makes me encouraged more than you can imagine, because quite frankly, one of my issues has been that, the younger cohort, millennials, Laval and I have gone through back and forth about this, who don't care about the political aspect of things, who are like, I don't care about these old geezers up here making decisions, and so I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just not going to participate, and I'm not going to vote, right? And I think that's always been a problem, because they want you to be disenfranchised. They want you to opt out so they can continue to do what they've been doing to keep the status quo. And what we do need is young, conscious, evolved, motivated people to get involved in politics and change the dialogue. And so while I wish that it was, and I know that there are young Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care what side of the aisle that you are. I care about the issues, which are bringing young energy with innovative new ideas and directives that's going to move this world into a place where we can be sustained. That's what I care about.
So what do you say to people who are climate deniers? Some people think, maybe to their ignorance, maybe they don't really have the knowledge of
give
some
up the money.
You mean my parents?
They don't want to give up the money.
Some people think Earth is going through its natural progression. This happens every a few decades, etc. So is this normal? Are we just tripping?
It's funny because I took a whole course on how to refute this argument.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
Right. So there's this argument saying that, so the Earth has gone through many epochs, right? And at one point in the Eocene, the Earth was so warm that you can see palm trees, for example, in like Antarctica. But the whole argument for the Earth is going through its natural cycle is irrelevant. Why? Because yes, the Earth does go through ice ages every 10,000 years, but the rate at which climate change is happening is on the scale of hundreds of years. So it's irrelevant that they say, okay, the Earth will eventually cool down due to the next ice age. No, we're not going to make it. In fact, because of the Anthropocene, we have permanently disrupted Earth's natural ice cycles. We're not even sure if the next ice age is coming because of how fast we're pumping.
The doomsday glacier is about to fall off the cliff.
We're about to find some brand new pandemics, like on the
Absolutely,
brand new pandemics.
Yeah,
because when that
crazy.
ice melts, there's all kind of shit up in that shit is going to melt out and permeate into the damn ecosystem.
Yeah.
So
I'm not drinking tap anymore.
yeah. So
I know, that's the thing. Somebody just told me the other day. Wow, I got a filter in my ass.
Britta's gonna only help you so much.
Exactly.
So Lily and Lavala, give us. I said Lily and Lavala.
Lavala, we were.
You and I, okay.
You're asking yourself.
So
Tell
Lily and
us what you
Shiana,
think.
give us some hope, because you both are in different fields here. Or at least Lily, you recently studied in a different field, where Shiana, you are mostly in security, energy security, in this transition away from fossil fuels, and Lily, you're in the agricultural field. So how has you got have you guys been give us hope, from your individual sector? What are you looking at and seeing, and what is the progression that's happening? You're going, hey guys, I know you're thinking this, or you might think this is doomsday, but hold on for a second, this is happening and I know this to be true, so there's hope. What can you guys both say in your individual fields?
And I will say that Lavala's answer 2 years ago was that he wasn't going to vote, but he was going to go on beaches and pick up plastics and trash from the beach.
I love that.
And I was like, my man.
That's not what I said, but that's
Still get it done. The ocean cleanup.
He's going to get a couple friends.
Well, why don't we start with the economist in house?
Okay.
Let's get the expert opinion.
Doomsday. So yeah, I feel like I see doomsday all the time. But I think the hope is that sometimes these crazy world crises that we see are impetus for major change. Lala and I have talked about what is needed to reach some of our crazy ambitious targets. So we need crazy ambitious ideas, and we're starting to see them, and we're starting to see a lot of money pour into these really innovative ideas of just folks thinking outside the box to have instead of having like, we have EVs, we have hydrogen fuel cell cars, but like, let's see, like, we want emissions to be just water now, not even like oxygen. We want it to be water. So it's like, just things like that. We're seeing way more focus on circular economy. So I'm just seeing like a lot of ambition followed with money, which is really cool. I will say there's still not enough money. There's a ton of money, but it's still not enough. Like, you see a lot of these big oil and gas companies making a ton of money because of these, like, all of these supply disruptions in these different countries, right? Like, they need oil and gas now, so they're providing it. They're making a ton of money, and a lot of that money, a lot of those profits are going back into renewables, so that's great. But a lot of it is just buying back shares. So that is not a good sign. That means that the money is not flowing to where it needs to go, which is like almost entirely into renewables, into new investments, into green investments. Definitely not oil and gas, but definitely not like share buybacks, Like, we need to see that money. We just need to see way more money. And I think as our generation starts to signal with the way we buy things, literally that simple, I think we're signaling to these big companies that we're serious about, living a more sustainable life, and you need to get on board. Otherwise we're not going to buy from you anymore. So anyway, this is like, we're talking about big companies and like individual consumers, but there's a link there. And I think we have the power to at least signal to the market that, we're not always gonna go for the cheapest thing anymore. We actually, especially
we'll pay a premium for something that's going to be more sustainable.
Exactly.
Right.
And millennials specifically do that. Gen Z, I don't know, they sound kind of broke to me. But like, I think when they get money, they will buy.
Broke.
They're younger.
Yeah.
Young and
but
broke.
millennials are really driving that. It's like really cool to see, and that's why we're seeing that shift in like social media and in mass media. We're seeing more sustainable ads and things like brands care, because we're showing that we care. So it takes some time, but I think it'll become more taken up by people.
And if, as a cohort, if you vote with your dollars, you will get change.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Exactly.
I wanted to add to what Shiana said. She brought up a really good point. We need massive investments in the industries, but in addition to that, I think we also need regulation. So we need the public intervention, and that's also crucial. You have the private sector who can only do so much, and private sector is very, very sensitive to whatever the legislative vehicle decides to do, right? Which is regulations. Once you put out a regulation, they start responding. Economics, right? Once you start putting tax on things, you see companies acting differently. So Shiana's an economist. She probably knows economics is the most efficient way to solve a lot of these market inefficiencies and externalities caused by climate change. Personally, my interest is slightly different from Shiana. So she works in energy. I'm also very passionate about renewable energy, but I've decided to focus on food and agriculture, which is, I would say, often the elephant in the room when it comes to climate discussions. At COP28, you have a lot of experts on energy and transportation, yet we often, when it comes to food and agriculture, it's something, food is something that everybody eats. We don't often talk about the tremendous environmental impact of our food systems.
It's interesting. I wonder why.
Number 2.
Exactly.
Yeah.
After energy.
30%. Exactly. 30% of all emissions come from
Cow fat farts.
I wish. That's a lot.
Joke about that.
That's a lot.
I should have told you
No,
not to
You
say
say
that.
cow farts?
No, 30% of all
I
emissions
was
come
just
from
talking.
food production.
It was a joke, guys. This is
Look, I don't really know. I'm like, really?
Not really a joke, because cow farts does emit a lot of methanes into the environment, and is
Actually,
one of
cow
the most
burps.
potent,
Actually, cow burps, not cow farts.
burps.
Burps.
Okay,
Way
burps.
more.
Ooh, that's
Yeah,
more.
way
That's,
more,
that's
okay.
more etiquette friendly, but
Yep.
Always want to call me out.
And then
Okay,
you're
go
not far off, because out of the 30% of all emissions that come from food systems, 15% of it comes from animal agriculture, which is a problem I'm trying to tackle. Because Lally, to your question about how can we be optimistic, I think what I realized is that I am an individual and I can only do so much. As much as I want to tackle the entire climate problem, it's an interdisciplinary problem, and one person cannot tackle it all. So what I do is I choose one field, I specialize in it, and I go as far as I can to address this one part of climate change, and hoping that an expert such as Shiana in energy, she's going to go as far as she can in the energy space. And hopefully, when it comes to, when you combine transportation, food systems, textile industry, everything,
you begin to really make a significant difference.
you develop a synergy, right? Everybody does their part. So
Right.
for my master's thesis, I chose to focus on alternative proteins, which are lower emission alternatives to how we currently produce animal agriculture, which is, first of all, it is absolutely atrocious. The brutality that goes on slaughterhouse, that is there's endless ethical questions there, but also the astounding environmental impact, not only from like emissions, right, but also the amount of land they take up, the amount of fresh water they use, and then the environmental externality to surrounding neighborhoods who have to live beside slaughterhouses, right? Their riverbeds are completely polluted, the waterways, right, all the animal waste.
Jesus.
It's completely gross. So I'm trying to say, okay, so we live in what year are we?
2024. I know.
2030.
It's crazy.
We live in 2024. We have AI. We have ChatGPT, but we're still using animal bodies as factories. I mean, we're still producing meat
That is kind of weird.
the same way we did in the 1800s, in the 1700s. Why are we still producing weight the same way we did in the 1800s when everything, education, transport, everything else has evolved? Like agriculture needs to keep up with times too.
Right.
So there's 3 kinds of alternative proteins that I focused on in my research. The first one is plant-based. You have Beyond Burgers alternative, Impossible Meat, which is using plant-based proteins, which is their common. But then I also focus on 2 emerging kinds of alternative proteins. The first one is cultivated meat, which is meat made from stem cells from animals in a bioreactor. So this is bioidentical. This is real, genuine meat produced from animal cells. And you can do this in bioreactors, and there's companies with patented technology. And for the first time in 2022, the United States Food FDA has approved a cultivated meat startup based in San Francisco.
Good job, FDA.
For human consumption. So
Wait, so that does not harm the animal?
no, you basically take the cell and then you feed it like nutrients and vitamins and
create the meat.
It proliferates. Yeah, just like you're growing muscle cells in a bioreactor. Exactly. So that's the first kind. The second kind, it does not even involve animals. It's just fermentation. So there's the traditional fermentation, which is how you make beer. But now we have precision fermentation, which is using microbes as factories to manufacture very specific proteins that are found in milk and egg. So now you can create basically, flavors identical to milk and egg because they're bioidentical to milk and egg casein. For example, the protein found in milk, you can now make it using microbes without going through an animal.
Wow.
I'd be down for that. I just don't tell me how that shit was done, and don't tell me that's what it is. But
I mean, same thing for slaughterhouse, right? You don't want to see what goes.
No,
on
I don't want to see how the sausage is made.
No, you don't.
No, give me a sausage, but no, I don't want to see how it's made. Yeah,
I know.
I mean,
Yeah.
I admit, yeah.
So now coming in after you haven't. Damn, sounds terrible as a friend. You haven't done your studies yet. You're still going through it. How much time do you have left?
Yeah, I have about 2 months till I need to
2
find a job.
months.
Guys,
You
I'm
graduate in 2
unemployed.
months?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's not awesome because I need to find a job, and that means I have 2
You
months
could
left.
look. You're coming out. You're graduating from Harvard. You will find a job.
Oh.
Yeah.
Trust me.
So much.
Even if it's not
will
even in
find a
Win-
job. In fact,
Yes, you do.
in 2 months you graduate.
Yep.
In 6 months I'll be coming to you for a loan.
Oh,
absolutely.
oh yeah, you are. I mean, my backup plan is to go pick up plastic on the ocean with lava, but
Come
we're
on.
not getting paid for
He said
doing
he's going to
that.
bring some friends.
Each one reach one.
That was
you
his
know?
answer. That was his. That,
Each one
that was
reach
his. That was his answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think given my perspective was skewed. I not a scientist. I didn't, go to school to work in the climate industry, and so as a creative, talking about seeing things happening, knowing that this is real and at our doorstep, and I'm just thinking, what can I do, not being a scientist, to still contribute?
I know. Oh, are you going to answer it yourself?
Oh, you answer for me. Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
I can't express how important storytelling and communication is in the climate space. As a very bad storyteller, I can tell you that your work is needed. I think we're talking about how do you get, the regular American, regular person to care about climate change.
Right.
It's really up to people like you. So
Yeah, so
Well-
I think, so different, people play different roles. That's what I realized. Like the scientists, they know the data, they know the facts, they can tell the world, but they don't know how to convey the message in a way that people can digest. Not do it in a fun and entertaining way, an engaging way, because people right now to get their minds off of the dance videos and whatever fad that's going on in the trend and other celebrities. That's what people really are gravitating towards. It's like, how do we make the thing that matter to us fun and engaging, and so we can participate and factual.
accurate. 'Cause
Right.
we see a lot of like fake news out there. I really hate using that term.
Yeah, me too.
I'm so sorry.
Point by Donald. That's why, right?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. But really, there is so much inaccurate information out there. So, like, I really appreciate what you're doing specifically because you care to actually know, like, to learn about renewable energy, to learn about what our grid looks like, to learn about how to reduce energy consumption and be more energy efficient. A lot of storytellers out there are not really trying to learn that way. They're just trying to be able to consume things on a high level and then just spit it out. But you're really trying to become an expert in your own right on the things that you care about and then convey it to the folks that will listen to you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's really important because there's, again, a lot of fake news out there. So.
Well, here's a question, that I have, and this is we have a significant audience that consumes our podcast. And so what would you say to folks that are listening to the podcast? What is the most impactful way that if I'm a listener that I can do in my day-to-day life? What's the most impactful thing that I can do that would ultimately make a difference? I didn't mean to stump them. You stumped the experts. I didn't mean to do that.
Well, I would say start to try to educate yourself a little bit. And so I think, wherever you live, I'm pretty sure there are probably organizations locally around you that are inviting you to come and join them and learn about climate. Right.
And I'm with you, but that sounds like work. I mean, I'm talking about somebody who's just the average Joe and Betty that are at home that hear this and like, okay, what's one thing I can do to make a difference? I'm not going to go to a meeting. I'm not going to do all that.
True.
But just give me one thing I can do that can make an impactful difference. I can do one thing if it doesn't cause me too much inconvenience, and take me out my way. What's one thing that I can do that can make a difference?
Change your spending.
Eat less meat.
Yeah, I was literally gonna be like,
You said eat less.
No, Lily's answer is just like stop eating meat. Period.
Make peas, not
Or
beef.
just eat less of it. You don't even have to get rid of it entirely. But now you know the story behind animal agriculture. Or like take public transit more. Like it's good for your health too to walk a little bit more. Do you have to drive?
Okay, there you go.
Unless
So
you've got
walk
two
more.
Teslas, and that's
Okay, but check your grid. Check your grid
Exactly.
makeup. Virginia is 38% nuclear, 30% nuclear, so we're
Okay.
good. We're pretty solid. I don't know about Maryland.
Yeah. There's a feature. Not everybody has an iPhone, but if you do, which a lot of people have iPhones, there's a feature in the Home app that can tell you when the grid is emitting positive or clean energy during a certain time of the day. And so if you have that Home app, you can, have it installed on your phone or your laptop, just as a widget, and you can see when the grid is emitting clean energy, and that's when you can use more power consumption. Maybe you can turn the lights.
For example, for me, right?
Yeah.
I run my dishwasher. Typically, what I have been doing for years is I run my dishwasher. The last thing I do at night before I go to bed,
Right.
because I think that's when the consumption is the least,
Exactly.
and I do it at 9 or 10 o'clock. No,
Ooh.
it's not.
Highest.
It's the
Everyone's
highest.
at home. Everyone's come back from work. So residential power usage and all that stuff. Like, yeah, that's if you see a
6
I'm
to
not,
8.
not gonna say a duck curve in California, but like that is when demand's highest because everyone's home. They're making dinner. They're like doing homework, all that stuff.
So I should do it at 10 in the morning.
In the middle of
12
the day.
p.m. is
In the
ideal.
middle of the
But
day.
it's-
Okay, see,
the middle of the day.
see, that's impactful, right?
It is, but you know what? There are dishwashers now where you can remotely start them, and so like things like the energy efficiency was going to be my number one choice. Right? My number one solution is like buy more energy efficient products. Not even like you don't have to buy anything too fancy. Like buy a high efficiency dishwasher and washing machine. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Just things like that because energy efficiency is the number one way to combat like high usage of fossil fuels. Like it's renewables, but energy efficiency is actually better than renewables. Just and being more efficient with the way you use energy in general. That's probably the number one way.
That's something I can do.
Yeah,
I mean, I see,
exactly.
and that's what I'm looking for. Easy things that I can do, our listeners can do. If you tell me that instead of running my dishwasher at 9 at night, run it at 12 noon in the middle of the day is better, I can do that. I can do that. I mean, that's easy,
And
right?
it's probably cleaner. Like sun is out. shining.
Yeah, those are
solar
things.
panels,
Those are things. You know, how much of an impact is solar, right? Solar panels relative to not having solar panels. Is that
Depends on where you are, what state you're in.
okay?
You know, like I know California, where I'm from, they used to pay you. They used to have something called a feed-in tariff. So they would pay you when you had solar panels to, you know, use the energy generated from the solar panels, use in your house, and then give your excess to the grid. So the feed-in tariff would allow you to give your excess solar power, you know, energy like to the grid.
You mean sell it back to the grid, or
sell it back?
Wow.
So you would get money back. And so there was a point where prices were negative. Electricity prices were negative in California, which is not great for California, for the market, because they're like, oh, we're paying people to give us we're losing money. Like people are getting money and they're losing money on their electricity. Sorry, so I won't get into the dynamics of a feed-in tariff, but they had that system in place to encourage people to put solar panels up. You know, but not every state will have as much sunshine as California and be as wonderful.
I just explored getting solar panels for my house here.
Yeah.
I just explored that, and you know, and I'm getting, you know, I have the guys give me quotes, and you know, the question becomes either I buy the panels or I lease the panels.
Oh, I see.
Right. If I buy the panels, then that means that I am able to capture, you know, anything excess that I use comes as a direct credit, and I can get revenue.
You can
From the grill, right? From the
you're
grid.
selling it to the grid.
I'm selling it to the grid.
There you go.
However, the cost to buy the panels is about $28,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Do you
very
get any
expensive.
tax credits from the
probably
Inflation Reduction?
Probably.
Yeah.
Now, if I lease it,
You're welcome.
I'm able to reduce my carbon footprint. I'm able to reduce my cost, but that goes back to the grid belongs to the leasing company. They get that. I don't get
That's
that.
if you rent it.
If I
out
lease it,
or
if I lease it.
it.
Yeah, if I lease it.
How much does it cost?
So-
That sounds like you should just buy it.
It's not much. I mean, it's not much because they're getting the ongoing revenue. So I get a reduction, they get the revenue, and, you know, they lease it to me. So the lease with my reduction makes it more cost effective for me, right?
With your reduction, what's the reduction?
It would depend on how many sun hours I get based upon, you know, how much shading I get. But
But the tax credit doesn't apply to that, right?
I don't think it
Yeah,
does.
it would only apply if you bought it.
If I bought it,
And plus, you would get. I mean, that would also add value to your house, right?
I don't know.
It should.
Does it?
It should. I have an EV charger in the home that I own, and it does boost the value up. It's like really trendy, I guess, to have an EV charger. But now I bought it before the tax credit, like before the IRA came into effect, and so, you know, now if I had put it in now, I would have gotten some kind of rebate. Yeah. So that's something to look into. There's a lot of money
It
going
is.
on to refurbishing your house, like upgrading
the
your
IRA,
house.
especially post IRA.
Well,
It's
yes,
true.
we do, and
Yeah.
get into it before another
Everybody else
administration.
gets into it,
Oh,
right.
Also, if another administration comes,
Yeah,
in,
because it may take that away.
Yeah.
it might.
Right.
We don't know. We don't know.
Another thing I would suggest for people who are listening to be more climate conscious is to get more friends who are climate conscious. Yeah, I mean, you know, birds with the same feather flock together. It's
Hey man, I like you, man. You're a good dude. Are you into
Are
climate?
you into climate?
We-
No, I don't trust you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Nah. We can't hang.
You know, yeah, but no, I seriously, it helped me, right? Like the more friends that I got in the climate space, the more I care, and the more it just became more easier for me to outsource things that I didn't know, and then before you know, you start to build a habit. You just
You build community.
you build community.
Right.
Yeah,
We're friends.
Is that why y'all friends?
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, you're into climate? Great, we're gonna be friends."
You're in the
forever."
climate? You're
Tell me
fine.
about hydrogen,
You're cute.
man.
And you're in the climate? Okay, I'll get in the climate because you're fine. and
or a
you're
bunch of
cute.
attractive people talking about climate change. That'll get people to listen.
Wow. That's the podcast.
And another tip, this sounds really lame. I just use Facebook Marketplace for everything now. I buy everything secondhand, or I just don't buy it,
secondhand
period.
buying.
Really?
Secondhand
Yeah.
buying.
Yeah.
That's real.
Right? You do it too, right? Facebook
100%.
Marketplace. I do it all the time. I just stop buying new stuff. I don't need it.
No, I don't.
Okay, so do you guys have brands that you can mention that you use, like in addition to Facebook Marketplace? Maybe clothing brands, maybe tech brands that you use. that are climate conscious.
No, we secondhand buy.
Yeah, I second
Well,
buy.
So I mean, well, not everything is going to be on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, but Buffalo, for clothes,
Yeah,
Buffalo
Exchange.
Exchange. We have like all these consignment stores, like come to
Okay.
my closet.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
some
that's
Burberry stuff for sale. Come through.
Right.
It's advertising my closet right now.
Were you,
You know what another solution I think is that we don't talk about enough is transportation, right? We talk about public transport,
Absolutely.
but also in DC,
Mm-hmm.
there's a big push for e-bikes.
Yes.
And I think like everyone's like, okay, cool, e-bikes, electric bicycles, like they're faster than regular bicycles, and they're great for cities that are bike friendly and pedestrian friendly. But really, they're a replacement for a car that a lot of folks don't know. Like I bought a car a year ago, and mostly because I'm not really trying to ride a bike, no offense, but there's people who are trying to ride a bike who can ride a bike very well in the city, and it's really like that's the kind of consumer choices we should be thinking about. Like,
Yeah.
do I buy a car just for myself, one person, or should I like get an electric bike or other kind of like electric pedestrian
Well,
mobility?
Yeah.
So to add on what Shiana says, right? As you see consumers starting to buy e-bikes more, if you're the urban planner, then you think maybe I should start making more bike lanes to accommodate for the
Exactly.
Right.
100%.
And that's happening.
That's
in
happening in
DMV.
DC. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're the second city in the U.S. Check me on facts, guys. I don't know this to be true, but I think I remember reading and realizing that DC has really been pushing our policies, and we're the second e-bike friendly city, or at least
it would
one
make
of
sense
5.
because there are e-bike lane. I mean, there are bike
Yeah.
lanes that are almost on every street in
Yeah.
DC now.
And these e-bikes are they are really modeling their bikes. They're actually advertising their bikes as a car replacement.
So let's give you a shout out because you've been doing a lot of content creation for different e-bike companies.
Yeah.
You've got several on your resume that you have shot for. So, you have a specific expertise in the e-bike area and you've sampled and shot and done content for several. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I used to be obviously a workout junkie wanting to, ride bikes to work out, and I thought e-bikes was a silly idea before. I was like, what's the point? Like, you pushing a throttle and I'm not working. I'm just like, I'm just going. This is a lazy way to work out. But that's because the idea of e-bikes is more like, hey, we're replacing your transportation. If you want to work out still, you can still get a manual bike and work out, get a mountain bike, a road bike. But e-bike is this specific lane where the mom and dad who's taking the kids to daycare, throughout the day, or going to grocery shopping, or they live in the city where they don't need to buy a car and they don't really use a lot of, mileage throughout the day. You can hop on your e-bike. Or for that guy, the young,
Why I gotta be young?
younger, old,
Uber Eats
Uber Eats driver. Yeah.
Like
Right. DoorDasher.
Right.
They don't I'm so annoyed when I see a DoorDash or a single person take up a whole parking spot
Yeah.
in front of a restaurant. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like I'm here to actually sit down and eat, and you're just here to like quickly get some food and go. Like, get on an e-bike.
Yeah.
Can they really deliver on the e-bike though?
Yeah.
If I got like 4 or 5 orders. Can I really
100%.
carry
They
that?
have these.
So,
like,
yeah.
describe them.
Yeah, I mean, they have like different series of these bike companies have the solo bike. The frame is just for the solo rider, and then you have ones with like huge backs. They call them the utility series, where have multiple wagons, like spaces where you can fit 2-3 people in there in the back, or groceries or things like that. Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, obviously the downsides to that is
Rain.
that's one.
Bikers don't care
Wind.
about rain, do they?
No, bikers don't really. No.
I feel like when I see them out there, I'm like, you don't care. Like you're fine.
So
Yeah.
you're telling them they don't care.
No, I'm-
Meanwhile, they're like, I care like a motherfucker. I'm cold and wet. It's cold as shit.
Not a biker. I don't know.
Yeah, but also like but worrying about your goods being stolen, then that's the only thing, right? So if it's like that's
You
been.
steal the whole bike.
Safety.
Yeah. Well, these bikes have sensors in them now. They have GPS location in them, so stealing them is not a good idea. But stealing the things that are in them,
Well, like lock it down, like the way you like lock a tire.
Yeah.
I'm acting like I know. I don't
I
know.
know. I mean, because that's
Yeah,
my
I'm
thing,
like,
and and I love it as a solution. I love it as a solution, an alternative to driving, or even because like electric vehicles are still expensive. A lot of people can't afford them now. So e-bike is that the hybrid or alternative. But I mean, if they're promoting as a family, like fit, your kids and take them to daycare and all these different things. But I think the one thing that I think about is just, you park your e-bike in a hood, you know what I mean? And like, you leave some goods in there, it's not locked up, it's exposed. People will steal them.
Absolutely.
So what is really the solution for that? That's just the only thing. But
Don't
take your
go-
shit with you.
Don't go in the hood.
But the things that you have in the family,
take your
but the things that you have in the family van or your SUV in your car, it's a lot of stuff that you have in there.
Then you
Different
develop different
SUV,
habits. You no longer have a trunk like that. You take what you need with
Maybe
you on the trip,
downsize too.
right?
Yeah. So it can inspire you to maybe go less, and that's
But
that's a good idea.
there's two plus sides to e-bikes. First of all, you don't have to worry about congestion. I don't know about you, but in Boston, when it's during rush hours, when I bike, I go way faster than cars. Cars are just stuck there.
You
Oh
ride
my
e-bike?
God. Yeah, you're right.
Well, not e-bike. I just ride a regular bike.
Yeah,
If
you-
you-
I ride a bike.
If you
Yeah.
walk in New York, you go faster than cars.
Yeah, I know you.
Right.
You go faster than cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
In New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my
hell
God,
yeah.
yeah.
No
second,
question.
you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about parking spaces because they're fucking hard to find.
Yep.
Right.
In a
Yep.
big city.
Right.
That's two problems solved: congestion and parking space.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
also you get to.
Cars in DC.
I tell people who don't really bike, there are places in your community, your neighborhood, that you won't be able to access via car.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
if you walk, it's just too far of a walk, so you most likely won't really get there. But if you bike,
Exactly.
you get to experience these little pockets of your places where it's like beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's away from a lot of people, and then you also the bike community is very friendly too, and so you get to meet
with
good
those
people.
bikes, you can just leave the shit and walk away. Like
You
you
can-
don't even have to worry about it. You leave it. You can leave it.
Some
do
of
you
them.
bike?
Oh yeah, I have a bike. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I saw
but I
that.
don't have the
Bike.
bikes where you just
I have a
ride it and
I
leave
have
the
a
shit. Like I see random bikes in random places. Like I'm like, what? Who the fuck left that bike there?
Right.
Like, that's just in like a random ass place. Like he's like, oh fuck it, I'm leaving here. Like what? I mean,
You
and
said
then
lime
how does a
skin.
company even find the damn bike once you leave it? But again, that's outside my pay grade. But I mean,
Yeah, they have. There's the wing bike, for example. They have that added to their service when you buy their bike. You could pay for an additional service to have security on the bike because they have GPS location on it. So if you took your bike and just park it, if you lost it, someone stole it, they will send out people, a crew, to go and like survey the city and retrieve your bike for you
What
within
did you do with
24
that?
hours or 2 days or something.
They
won't steal it back.
To steal it.
Well, not steal it back, but the
hey, like you do a boom, boom, boom.
yeah.
Yo, man, we came for the bike.
The mafia's after you.
You came for the bike.
We are part of that extra service.
And if you don't give it to us, we got Shiana who's gonna fuck you up. Cause she gonna fuck motherfuckers up. All right. So give us the bike, or we'll bring Shiana in here to fuck you up. Yeah, okay. So what you gonna do?
Disclaimer: fake news. That is not. Oh gosh, man, guys. Well, this has been a fun talk.
No, it's been good. It's
Really.
been good. I appreciate. Look, absolutely. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
You have no idea how much this has been awesome for us.
Mutual.
Have y'all on. The energy, the expertise, the conversation, it's just, raising the level of our shit. Because, when it's just me and him, it's
100%.
just me and him.
It's just
Y'all
me.
is all
We
it's
love listening to you guys.
Yeah.
No, we need some people on. We're tired of each other.
damn right.
Okay, question. Can I have a separate episode for just talking about how much I love DC? Because I
Oh,
feel like I need a
absolutely.
separate
Yeah, your
episode.
first time here, right?
Hanging out with Gianna and Lavale. Showing me
Yeah.
around.
Oh, so
been
so how?
You hung out with me too, but that's okay.
Hey, no!
No, that's all
Well,
right.
no, outside of the crib. Oh, we're gonna add you to the schedule, so you have no excuse. You can come.
Yep. Let me
So
know.
we can do a second EP before you leave. Maybe
Can we?
Maybe.
me
Just about DC?
when
When are you
we-
leaving? Yeah, maybe we leaving. When you
Canadian
we-
DC. I'm leaving Monday. Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Monday.
Possibly, not set in stone, but possibly
yeah.
after we take you around, explore, and you can
love
come back
to.
and give your feedback
Yeah,
of what you
Sunday.
think about
Let's
DC.
do Sunday afternoon, right?
Yeah, because
All right.
just to tee it up,
Yeah.
Lily's here, first time in DC from Canada,
Yeah,
right?
Toronto.
Toronto. Toronto?
By way of
I
Boston.
love Toronto. Toronto is
Then
shit. It's a
come and just
great.
spend some time.
Toronto's so
Yeah.
freaking awesome,
It is.
except in the winter.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
yeah, no question. Yeah.
Yeah.
But look, we appreciate y'all coming on for real. Y'all
you
have no
so
idea.
much.
Thank you.
We're such fans. Of
Thank you
y'all.
so
Oh, I'm fans of y'all.
We're fans of y'all.
All
Thanks.
right.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right,
Till the
guys.
next time, y'all.
Till next
All
time.
right, guys.
All right.
Time to eat some
Thank you.
pizza.
Yeah.
Yes.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.